Like he did that. He saw it. He almost died multiple times. And he came back from war and he was so messed up. And that movie, God literally used that movie to save Jimmy Stewart, like
I didn't know
to help him in his mental health, to start working through his PTSD.
That's incredible.
God used that movie to do it.
What's up, guys? It is Parker from the Walsh podcast, and today we are surfing the internet to find things to react to. Let's jump in.
Talking to Michael Knowles about this actually last week, and his take is that acting it's almost like it could be a spiritually dangerous art almost, because you have to open yourself up. It's like, I'm probably not doing a good job of representing his viewpoint here, but let's say you're playing a serial killer. It's like,
No, I know what you're saying.
Yeah, you have to inhabit that mentality so completely that it could be dangerous.
There are absolutely people who have not done enough work on themselves, who are still, I would say, more psychologically fragile or traumatized or whatever. They're just not, they don't have a really robust and strong, again, it's like, if you work out all the time and then you go and lift heavy weight because you've already been lifting heavy weight, you're gonna be all right. If you're trying to go tap into something super deep and emotional and take on a serial killer, and you haven't done a lot of work at really working the muscles in your own emotions and in your own spirit and soul and mind to be strong, then you might fall into some darkness. I mean, listen, if we were afraid of doing that, then, and if there was some, absolute truth to it of like never play a role that's, been engaged in any darkness, well then by God, no one would play David in the Bible.
Yeah, so I think they make a good case here. It's interesting that he brought that up. So like, evil exists everywhere because we're sinful, right? So it seems to me that if you take this to his point, you take this to the logical conclusion that you wouldn't be able to create any story because every person is evil. But it kind of seems like a logical fallacy to say if there's a potential for something bad to happen, you should either fear it or not partake in that. Like, I don't know if we would keep that same logic to, tell me what you guys think in the comments. Like, would we say that about like swimming or driving? So like, there's a potential for me I'm opening myself up to being in a car accident, so I shouldn't drive a car. Or, I go swimming, I open myself up to drowning, so I don't go swimming. I'm thinking about this off the top of my head. I haven't seen this before, so I wonder if you guys agree with that. But it seems to me that would be a poor logical conclusion, or at least a bad premise to set. Let's keep going here. Let's see what he says.
King David and slaying Goliath and all that stuff, and that's fine. But I don't think that the Bible should be whitewashed. I think that in order for us to understand the redemptive power of God, we need to understand the darkness that so many of these characters go through. And in order to play David authentically, one must show those parts of his journey. You don't have to be like egregious with it, right?
Yeah, and part of like what he was saying before too, I'll stop it real quick here. The theological work that we should do that for like our lives, even to just live. So not even in an acting scenario or even like a hobby or whatever. You should do the work theologically, because everything is downstream from theology, so like, we're watching Matt Walsh. Ben Shapiro is known for saying politics is downstream from culture. So, but like, I think even Matt, would probably agree that politics is downstream from culture, but everything is downstream from theology. That's where you make moral claims. That's where you decipher, morality. So if that's the case, that's like where you should start, I guess, is my point.
You got to talk about how he basically had a dude murdered and was having an adulterous affair with that murdered guy's wife. Like, that really happened. And but he was still a man after God's own heart. And so anyway, like, I understand the sentiment, but it's not something that I...
Yeah, I would agree.
When you're on set making a movie, do you know if it's going to be good or bad in the final product?
I mean, yes, but no, because there's so many variables that can ultimately make... I mean, it's honestly, it's a very... Like, being an actor, even one 25 years into a career that's been reasonably successful, and I've gotten to, be a superhero in a franchise and all that stuff, I'm still at the mercy of so many other people when it comes to even what my performance is. I mean, I thought Shazam 2 was I actually liked Shazam 2 more than I liked Shazam 1 in different ways. I thought it would do better. It didn't. There's a whole bunch of reasons why.
What do you attribute that to?
Well, I mean, where do I start? And the internet's just going to come after me again. Listen, superhero fatigue, that's one.
Yeah.
I mean, we're inundated with so many superhero movies.
Dude,
and I think
it's been like, 15 years of superhero movies? Like, dude. And it's just this reoccurring use of IP, you know, like this is like our big thing on the podcast, right? So like we don't watch lazy, we watch well, we watch actively. We want to unhook the IV drip of passive consumption of entertainment. And for the last 15 years, maybe even 20 years, we have seen the same like superhero just shoved down our throat. And like down in the comments, let me know, what was the last original movie you saw? Like original idea. I remember being in high school and we would go to the movie theater all the time and we just couldn't wait to go see the new movie. And now it's just this repackaged thing. I think maybe, you know, or maybe sequels and stuff like that. So I would be really interested to know if you've made it this far in this video. I want to know in the comments, what was the last original movie you saw? And what was the date of that movie? That would be interesting. Because he's like, the superhero fatigue is so true. Like, I'm so tired of superheroes. Like, it's time for something new.
I think that after a while, people are kind of like, okay, like I've seen this. And we had moments in our movie that were repetitive or had been seen in other movies. There's nothing new under the sun, right? But we also had, I think, some really fun stuff. I did my best. I did what was on the script. I did the best that I could. People wanted to tear me apart for it anyway, because, you know, there's a lot of people on the internet, and that's all they do. That's their whole MO. That's where they find their identity. That's where they find their power. It's so sad that that online, specifically social media, has empowered people in that way, because it's so toxic and destructive for everyone involved, particularly them, because they could be doing something much more productive with their time. So there was a lot of that stuff. There was a lot of, you know, DC itself as a comic book studio. You know, there's all this weird, you know, fandom war.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it's. I don't know if social media. I don't know if I would say social media is inherently bad. I think it would be neutral to like anything like good or evil. It's how you use the tool. You know, like a hammer isn't good or a hammer isn't bad. Morally speaking, it's how you use it. So if you use it to build a house, it would be a good thing. But if you used it to bash in somebody's face, you know, if you know, I guess for more or less, if you know, as long as they're not like attacking you or something, you need to defend yourself, then it would be an evil use of the hammer. So the use is what makes it good or evil, not the actual tool itself. So, and I'm sure he would agree.
Marvel and DC, and then even within each fandom, there's like fractions and factions of those fandoms, and all that stuff got really crazy. I don't know at the end of the day, all of the pieces just came together in order for it to be the best film, the very, very best film that it could have been, or that we got the word out the best we could to everybody. I don't know, you know. But at the end of the day, I just have to lean back and be like, all right, God, if that's what you saw fit for that film and how it ultimately hit the world, then I have to receive that. I have to radically accept that that's what that was, you know.
Yeah. What you said about, you know, movies are an art form, but unlike pretty much any other art form I can think of, there's just so many people involved, hundreds, in bringing this to fruition, which is why, you know, I've made two movies. They're both documentaries, but I remember our last one, which went out in theaters. We were at the premiere talking to Jeremy Bourne.
Matt Walsh's movies were really good. I do have to say, I think I liked What Is a Woman better than Am I Racist, even though Am I Racist was really good. I liked both of them, but I do think I liked the idea. They're very different, so maybe I can't even say that. I don't know. If you guys, again, post in the comments, which one was better? What Is a Woman or Am I Racist? Which one do you like better? I think people would say Am I Racist is better. I might be the minority on that one.
So you talked about social media. I'm thinking about, so you've been in the business for 25 years, so you came in right at basically the turn of the century. The changes in the movie business in that time, one of the big ones is, I guess when you started out, there was no social media. So
I started with a beeper.
Right. So the difference there is pretty enormous, because I guess back in the day, before social media, you put a movie out and it does well or it doesn't do well. You hear from the critics, but you basically don't hear from anybody else. I mean, you know, there's no forum for everyone to tell you how much they love you or hate you based on the film. But now it's this instant feedback from everybody.
Yeah.
How, you know, what's that like?
Man, I don't know. Like, I think that, again, as somebody who really loves people, humans, and really love kind of interacting with and engaging with my fan base, I've always found ways to be able to do that. I think social media is a really cool way of being able to do that, and I'm grateful that it allows us to do that and to tap into our audience, right? There's a lot of really cool ways that we can engage and incentivize them now, you know, whether it's things like Kickstarter or even like Patreon, and all of it. I think that there's some really cool things that have come out of technology, social media, the marriage of all of that, and entertainment. But I would say that, unfortunately, it's probably, well, I don't know. I was going to say it's probably more negative, but then I realized that even like with let's say, you know, coming out of the political closet recently, 75% of the comments that I was getting were from people that were kind. we're not
Yeah.
hateful and toxic and
75%.
Which that kind of goes back
I
to
would-
what
I
I
would
was
say-
saying earlier, guys. Like it's the tool in and of itself is not. I mean, obviously, I'm speaking generally here. I'm sure there's always an outlier, but I guess the main point is like the tool itself is not good or evil. It's how it's used is what makes something good or evil. You know, and I think he would agree based off of what he's saying, because he's going back and forth, right? He's like, well, it's evil. It's predominantly, and then he stops himself, and then he says, well, but 75% of the time it's like good, like the comments are good or the feedback is good or whatever. So, like, I get the tug of war that he's playing in his own head, where you have, you know, like, oh, there's all this bad. Sometimes I wonder, and you know, sometimes I just wonder if the bad is more noticeable than the good, because, you know, the bad is what usually gets clicks, right? So like arguing or debate, or, you know, you see a headline or a title, it's like this person owned this person or whatever, you know, that's going to drive engagement. I wonder if that's just more out in your face. But then again, you know, early Mr. Beast days, you've got him giving all this money away to different people, and people like that as well. And that, I mean, look at where he's at. So I don't know. I would stick with it. It's probably a net positive more than it's a net good, but I would say with the caveat, like the negativity is probably a little bit more glaring. I don't know how to communicate that. It's easier to see the bad than it is the good, but the good does just as good as the bad. I don't know if you followed that or not. It's probably incoherent, but that's what I'm going with.
Is original storytelling just dead in Hollywood? Does it exist anymore? Is there a future for it?
Yeah, we just
I
talked
so.
about that. Let's see what
I
they
mean,
got to say
if I have
here.
anything to do with it, absolutely. I mean, it's one of the reasons why I felt very strongly
Wait,
25 years ago
rewind
when I
that
started
back.
working in the
What did
industry,
he just
and I just
say?
saw how broken it all was.
I think
mean,
he
even then,
misspoke.
Is original storytelling just dead in Hollywood? Does it exist anymore?
Okay,
Is there
so
a
I
future
missed
for it?
that. I missed that. It's like,
Yeah,
is there a future for it? It was
I
just
mean,
funny
if
that-
I have anything to
I
do
was
with it,
like-
absolutely.
Here, pause. I thought he was saying like, is original storytelling dead in Hollywood? He said, I hope so. I missed the "is there a future" part. Okay, let's keep going.
Years ago when I started working in the industry, and I just saw how broken it all was. I mean, even then, there was the beginnings of this trend of, let's just go reboot this long old series into a movie. That was the big thing back in the late 90s into the 2000s, right? That was the kind of the beginnings of the reboots was, well, we're not going to just remake a movie or whatever, or bring back a whole TV show. We're just going to find IP that people knew from TV, and then we'll give it a new skin, a new cast, and we'll make it a movie event. And I remember looking at that, and I was like, and by the way, which is not to say that every remake or sequel,
Yeah, I mean, I would say
reimagining
Star
is
is
bad.
Born
I think that
was
there's
a
some, there's
really
been some
good
really cool
remake. So I would agree with him that remakes aren't in and of themselves bad, but when you're just going after dollars and there's no actual creativity, you just give us the same story, like Fast 455, I'm probably going to get hate for that in the comments, but it's like the same thing over and over again. I know I'm kind of probably beating a dead horse here because we just talked about it. I just think that he's right. We need new original movies. And I would agree here on this point that remakes aren't in and of themselves bad, but when you're using that as a crutch to just go after the dollars, then it kills creativity, and there's no actual competition for like a better movie, a better script, a better screenplay, a better anything, Maybe the only thing that I can think of right now off the top of my head is A Quiet Place, maybe in terms of original, like the first one. I know they made a couple of sequels at this point, but A Quiet Place is really the only original idea. And then they came out, someone down in the comments, check my memory here. I think A Quiet Place came out first, and then before A Quiet Place Part 2, they came out with Bird Box on Netflix, which is just the same kind of idea. The difference was A Quiet Place is, a whole metaphor on being deaf, and then Bird Box was all about being blind. So, like, you can see kind of even that being, a copy just altered a little, right? So it's just a retelling of kind of the same idea. But that's the best I can do in terms of just original stories, like within the last, I don't know, good while.
Sequels and really cool reimaginings and reboots. It's when that is becoming more and more, as you're saying, more and more the well that's being drawn from. And I think that's because more and more, I don't know exactly when it started. 25 years in Hollywood is a long time, but it's nothing compared to a lot of people.
Again, like you guys see this, like, so they have the camera slider going, and then this one's on a jib. So you can see that vertical motion is super.
And who have seen this insane transformation of what studios used to be and used to do, and who used to be the leaders of those studios, and how I would say overall they had more vision, more creativity, more balls to be able to take big swings and be like, no, we're gonna go do this thing.
Real quick, so he's talking about Hollywood execs and stuff. So if you guys don't follow him, you need to go follow on X. You need to go follow Marcus Pittman of Lore TV. I think he's like the CEO or something of Lore TV. And they've got a whole different thing going where you buy loot and then you can support the individual creator. And instead of your money going towards big production houses that then force the idea because they've got all the money, right? So they force the idea. This puts the idea back in the creator's hand, and then the audience in partner with the creator get to choose the best ideas. So like go check out Lore TV if you haven't. Follow Marcus Pittman on X and tell him Parker Brown sent you. And they've got a really cool thing going on over there to where it, like exactly what he's talking about, these executives aren't that they're more about the bottom line, so it stifles the creativity.
Trying to get an idea that doesn't get so mangled in the product. They might say, hey, that's a great new idea, we love it. But we're going to change everything about it. And it's going to start towing some agenda that we want to infuse into it. Mm-hmm. And you're like, well, wait, but that's not the story that I pitched you guys. No, we love it. We just want to change everything about it. But new thing, right? So there's so many reasons.
I'd love to ask him about Top Gun. So like the sequel Top Gun, so that was beloved by everybody. That did really, really well at the box office. Everybody was saying that it did a really good job not injecting any messaging into it. So I'd be interested to know the creative control difference between that and then something like maybe Barbie or, some other, nostalgic IP that then was injected with this other, woke message or whatever that we all hate.
But then you hear other people say, well, it's always been that way. It feels... So I went back and I looked, and this is not any kind of great shock, but if you look at the number one highest grossing film by year for the last 10 years, 2014, it was Transformers. 2017, it was all Star Wars. 2018, Black Panther. 2019, Avengers. 2020, Bad Boys for Life. 2021, Spider-Man. 22, Top Gun Maverick. 23, Barbie. 24, Inside Out. So every single one is a sequel or IP or a remake. Then I thought we go back to the 90s, film of each year. 1990 was Home Alone. 91 was Terminator 2. 92 was Aladdin. 93 was Jurassic Park. 94 was Forrest Gump. 95 was Toy Story. 96 was Independence Day. 97 was Titanic. 98 was Saving Private Ryan. 99 was Star Wars, Phantom Menace. Only 2 sequels on that list. The rest are all original or based on a book.
Yeah.
So it seems like this is a very real thing that has happened.
100%.
And in fact, if you go back this past century, or not past century, but this century, starting in 2000, there's been one movie that was the top grossing movie of the year that was an original story, which was Avatar.
So technically it is, but it's just a retelling of Pocahontas, really, right? If the Indians were aliens, essentially, and the settlers were in spaceships. So I don't know. It's just interesting to me. So even that is kind of a remake in a way, but I get the idea that there was a lot of new IP created. So
is this what's happened? I mean, you talk about the studio system. Is it in the current studio system? And if you were to start at the top and work your way all the way down, the executives all the way down to the people actually working on the movie, how far would I have to go down the ladder before I find someone who actually cares about the story itself? Because I feel like probably in the executive meetings,
that's a good question.
But I feel like there's no one saying, "Was this a story even worth telling? Does this story matter?" I feel like they're probably not thinking about that as much.
Or even like the messaging, right? So like, are they just thinking of a really cool story and it remains superficial, or are they looking at like what the purpose of the story is for? Is it talking about an underlying truth or an underlying fallacy that they're trying to reconcile, right? So I wonder, are these people just completely stupid? Are they idiots and they don't really think that deep, and they truly are just, studios that want the bottom line to make sense, and they're just here, take your cheap sugar of a film and let's produce that because we know that it makes money? Or are they actually trying to tell a story that makes an impact on something and has a point to it that portrays something greater? On the podcast, if you guys haven't checked out our podcast, this is kind of a shameless plug, but the idea of our podcast, the Watch Well podcast, you can find it everywhere you consume podcast content. It's like we would say that, and you're welcome to disagree, but we would say that every single movie is a Christian movie because underlying every movie is eternal truth, or else the narrative can't support itself. So in order to support a narrative, you have to make moral claims. So what we do is we just objectively look at what those moral claims are that support the narrative of a particular movie, and then we just observe them, point them out. We discuss them on the podcast, and it's super interesting to see where that goes. So, we did that growing up with me and my cousin, and now we made it a podcast. If you guys are interested, check out the Watch Well podcast.
There's just not as many people involved who actually are worried about forget about whether it can make money. Is this story, should it even exist? Is it worth telling this story?
Well, like I was saying, I mean, I think that's part of the problem. I think that within the executive class at this point, I think that there has been a real changing of the guard in the mindset of what it means to be an executive today. And this is not an indictment of who they are as human beings, although I think that people that allow for it are lacking in some, bottom line, just the integrity to say, hey, let's not go do this. Let's not go down this road, right? But there's pressures, and the pressures are all either monetary, right? Like that's kind of always been money, money, money. How can we make money? But then there's also been this insane, I don't even know what socio-political agenda pressure that comes from lots of different places, but that ultimately starts shifting cultural perception. And the studios become victims of that too, I think. I don't think, a lot of people want to say that Hollywood is the one who's pushing a lot of the agenda that they don't like, whatever that agenda is. Certainly, Hollywood is massively complicit in it. But I don't know that these agendas even necessarily start in Hollywood. Some of them might, but some of them are them thinking, oh, what's the hip, cool thing to do? What are we going to do so that people like us and we don't get canceled and da. They're not immune to those same things. And so you have a lot of executives who might mean well, but they're like, guys, we got to do this thing. We got to go make this thing because that's what's going to comply with the expectations of us as a company. Otherwise, people are going to think we're racist or we're sexist or whatever any of those particular things are. So
I don't know. I think that's the minority. This is just me not being a part of any Hollywood, whatever. Just some random guy on the internet, just giving my opinion on some of this stuff because I love watching movies and I love critiquing movies. But I would say that I think predominantly Hollywood pushes this stuff when you're talking about having popularity and having a lot of reach, and then a bad worldview, like an incoherent worldview, and then you go to some of these awards and you see the award. It's just gross. Like I think that I would give a little bit of grace to what he's saying, that yes, there are probably some outliers that get caught up in the ethical dilemmas of, well, this is the way, this is trending or this is going a certain way and I want to be hip and I want to be cool. But we talked about this before, where that's why the theological component, the work that he talked about doing before you take some of those acting roles, because if you guys remember back where they were talking about how Michael Knowles thinks that, you're opening yourself up to some force of evil. But even in your daily life, that's important because of that exact thing. Like, you've got to stand for truth, and there's a cost to that, right? So ultimately, you've got to do the theological work so that you can have something concrete to stand on. If your worldview is anything other than that, it's just incoherent and self-refuting. I think that that's kind of the main point. If you're a cog in a wheel and not willing to stand up for something, then change is never going to happen.
What about a remake of a film? I've been waiting for Hollywood to try this, and probably never will. But if you're going to do a remake, what about a remake of a movie that was a good idea but not executed well? So then you remake it.
I think this is part of the criteria of why I think remakes are actually good, or at least passable in some exceptions. Yeah. What movie would you suggest?
That's a good question.
I'll give you one. Okay. My criteria for remakes is simple. I think it's like, you look at the source movie and you're like, was it incredible? Like incredible, truly in every way, shape, and form the first time? Leave it alone. If there are aspects of it that a remake would really help, one of those might be, hey, it's so old that a lot of people, younger audiences, are sleeping on it. They're not.
So I've heard rumors that they're going to remake the Narnia movies, and it's super interesting. I'll throw a clip up here of somebody talking to Denzel Washington.
So why did he need a black director? Could a white director not have?
It's not color, it's culture.
Explain the difference, because I think we're
Steven Spielberg
anyway,
did
talking
Schindler's.
about how picking the director,
Martin Scorsese did Goodfellas, right? Steven Spielberg could direct Goodfellas. Martin Scorsese probably could have done a good job with
Kind of
Chase,
the race thing.
but they're
And
cultural differences.
He went back and I think his,
I know, you know,
I think his response
we
was
all
actually
know
pretty reasonable.
what
He said it's about culture.
it is when a hot comb
And it would
hits
be
your hair on a
interesting
Sunday
because I
morning,
think
what it smells like.
I've heard
That's a
rumors that they're
cultural
gonna remake the
difference,
Chronicles of
not
Narnia
just a
and
color difference.
A Christian.
So it's the culture.
C.S. Lewis was a Christian, and I think it would be good to have a Christian do that for the same reason that Denzel Washington had when he responded to that reporter. But I would say I've wanted a remake of Chronicles of Narnia with the new CGI capabilities, and dare I say, I don't know, I'm probably going to get flack, but I could watch The Lord of the Rings all the time. It'd be interesting to get a remake of that in the future with some of the new technology that we have. I keep that open-handed because The Lord of the Rings is iconic and legendary. I'd be okay if they left it alone too. So I don't know. Some things that you just, fall in love with, you could just watch over and over and over again. And I do agree with his criteria. I think it's a good criteria.
Want anybody else to touch it, and I don't know, stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with your basic philosophy. I will say that It's a Wonderful Life is firmly in the don't touch category for me.
Understandable. That movie was a miracle that it was ever made. Like, it wasn't, basically, it almost never happened. Frank Capra barely got the money, barely got Jimmy Stewart to do it. Jimmy was fighting it tooth and nail because he had just come back from World War II. And bro had the most insane PTSD. He was a bomber pilot in World War II and watched hundreds of his fellow airmen die, either falling literally from blowing up in midair, like all the things you've seen in Memphis Belle and all these other war movies. Like, he did that. He saw it. He almost died multiple times. And he came back from war and he was so messed up. And that movie, God literally used that movie to save Jimmy Stewart, like,
I didn't know
to help him in his mental health, to start working through his PTSD.
That's incredible.
God used that movie to do it. There's entire scenes where he was so off script because he couldn't remember his lines, and Capra was like, just speak from your heart, just like say, and he would say stuff that made no sense, but it was like real and in the moment, and they kept it in the movie. Like his scene at the bar where he's praying to God was one take. And he didn't remember all the words. He said what was in his heart, and he fumbled around in it. And the script supervisor was like, he missed all this. And Capra was like, it doesn't matter. Print it. We're done. So the reason why we all got it on every TV station since like the 70s, and why it's so a part of our life and our culture, and what God gave us this beautiful film, is because it first failed at the box office in order to then be in and put through our televisions our whole lives.
That's
isn't that
insane.
amazing? Yeah. It just blows my mind. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, no, I didn't know that about that movie.
I didn't know that at all. That's so crazy.
We watch it every Christmas, like every American family does, or so. And it did strike me recently. I don't know why. One of the more recent times watching it with my kids. This is pretty dark. It's like, you got a guy that's about to kill himself, and it's just something that like modern Christmas movies would never go there. They would never go anywhere near suicide as a plot point, which I think is one of the reasons why modern Christmas movies are often quite bad. But that's a whole other thing. I want to talk a little bit about the political side. Before we do this, there's one other. When it comes to the film industry, because I know that you feel strongly about this, and we talked just for a second off air about it, and I do too. So AI in the film industry, is this where things are heading? Are we heading to a point where they're just going to like type in a prompt and generate a movie and throw it out there for the masses? Are we going there? And how do you feel about that if that's where things head?
The short answer is yes. I believe that in very short order, AI will be so good that it will be indiscernible from human content. Meaning graphics engines will get so good, NVIDIA graphics engines will get so good. They basically already are right now. It just depends on how much time you want to spend in the render and everything. So people saying 2 years ago, it's gonna be stupid. Look, the picture's got like 6 fingers. Then it did. Now we're 100 times better than what that is, and the next step will be 1,000 times better. So if I believe that to be true, and I do believe that to be true, then all of a sudden now you have a technology that allows anyone, studios or Joe Schmo, to sit at home and work with an AI model to then creatively curate whatever you want. A movie, a TV show, a video game, a song, just by prompts, just by saying, I want these elements to it, these types of characters, this feel, this tone, this style, blah, 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 blah. Details about it, enter. What? In moments, you have a one of one of any of those types of things. That you, by the way, this also plays on people's hubris, because now you are the creator. You're the filmmaker. You're the game maker. You're all these. I don't need anybody else. The problem is, I don't think anybody's thinking through truly downstream of what that means. Because if you give everyone the power to make whatever they want, whenever they want, they don't want what you want or what you make. Not nearly as much. And if it's indiscernible, it'd be one thing if watching a movie made by real humans, you could really tell that's real humans. And there's a lot of people that argue.
That's not a bad point, though. I didn't really think about that. So his idea here is that if you can make whatever you want whenever you want, then you're not going to want anything anyone ever... How did he say that? You're not going to want anything else anyone ever makes. So if you can make whatever you want whenever you want, you're not going to want anything else anyone makes. I've never thought about that before. That's an interesting point.
You'll always be able to tell because, emotions are a human thing, and I'm sorry, but even we are replicating what we learn and see. We're all regurgitating some version of something that we've learned. And once AI models, their computing power, thinking power, is able to scan all of these movies and see where all of these moments of tears and emotion and how those all interact and work through a story, it will, with NVIDIA graphics, it will simulate that on a screen and you will feel it. You will feel it. So I think that we're all in for some really, really dire straits, to be perfectly honest.
Well, let me say, because I agree with everything you said about all of it, except for the last part about it being a niche audience. And that, you might be right. You might be right that down the line when AI just completely takes over and you can just generate a movie by typing it in, then you're also right that if you can do that, then like why do we need
Anybody else?
None of us need to make movies because they don't need to watch ours. So that's your point.
Yeah.
But so maybe that happens. And then people who are making actual art they're just playing to this niche crowd. Maybe that. I am cautiously optimistic, or maybe I should say at least I want to be optimistic that it won't be a niche audience because it'll be much greater. It'll be still a mainstream audience looking for real art because that's what art is. You know, art is. I think there are a lot of legitimate applications for AI. I think that it's a very impressive technology.
Sure, absolutely.
There are a lot of ways you can use it that are totally legitimate, but it cannot make art. Like it literally can't. It can do the thing that looks like it, right? It can do that, but it can't actually make art because art by definition is an expression of the human soul. That's what art is.
Oh,
it is
that counterpoint.
someone conveying something that's deeply within them through an art. That's what makes it art. So if it's a computer, it's not art. And so what I'm saying is that I think just as art is an expression of the human soul, human beings have a deep yearning for art in their own souls. And so they're not going to want to actually go watch the AI-generated movie for the same reason. This is the comparison I would make. And it's not exact. It's not a one-to-one, but it's close. Any even slightly advanced computer can make a really beautiful painting. Like you could have any computer can make a really gorgeous image, right? Well, if some art museum out there said they were going to have an art show with a bunch of computer-generated AI art, I don't think anyone would go see it, go look. Maybe as a novelty, but no one's going to because I know that a computer can make a beautiful image. I know that. I'm not.
Yeah. So like this is a good point too because there's a lack of skill. So like if you're automating everything, then there's no skill. But a person who isn't automated takes years and years, decades to hone a skill, and then they produce this thing that no one else can produce, and that's what gives it value, especially when it conveys a meaning. So I like this. I like this line of thought.
Impressed by that. The thing that makes the painting impressive is specifically that a person made it. It is specifically that a human being, the brushstrokes, the fact, the statue of David is only impressive because a human being carved that thing out of stone. Yeah. And if it wasn't that, if it was just made by a computer in 2 seconds, all of a sudden it goes from being one of the great works of art of all time to being absolutely nothing. Mm-hmm. And so that's how I feel. I think it's apparently how you feel. I also think that everyone kind of feels that way. So I don't know that this can have an audience.
And art is a part of creation, but what the audience is now going to be given is the power to create. Now, this is part of the folly, which is it will make people think that they are an artist because they creatively typed in these words. Now, what is a book on your iPad? It's somebody typed words and it's on your technology. It's on a computer. Would you say that's not art because it's simply on your computer? No, you'd say that's still a book. It's just in a different, right? People are going to type full paragraphs of what it's not coding. It's not like traditional coding, but you're creatively coding by telling the computer, this is how I want this book, this story to be represented on this computer as either a film, television show, video game, or song.
Well, here's what I think he's missing, and I think this is more towards Matt's point here. And I'll say this: like, part of a movie and a story is not knowing the journey in which you are about to go on. So, like, we get excited to go watch a movie because we don't know the resolution. So, if you're able to create anything you want, whenever you want, and in doing that, you'll automatically just know the story. So the market would be more for not knowing that resolution. And so I think that I would have to take a little bit more of Matt's side here because I think part of a story, the part like the soul of going on that journey is part of what we crave when we want to jump into a story, right? You want it to be real and you want it to be immersive, whether you're in a book that you can't put down or a movie theater where time just kind of vanishes. We want that. And the reason why time vanishes or, you get lost in a book is because the story is so good and you don't know what's going to happen next. And if you are the creator and you're typing into a computer, you're automatically always going to know that resolution to the conflict of the story, which would remove that, like you would never get that payoff. So I think that I'm interested. I'll let this play a little bit longer to see what he says, but I think right now I'm still more on Matt's point of the larger market is going to be for people craving that payoff and that resolution, the journey that they can go on and not know the end, so that they can be more, you kind of put on the character aspect of the story that you're enjoying.
But again, I think that it will be, not only will it be indiscernible, right? But there's so many other parts of human nature that are at play that literally erode our ability to stand that ground. And one of those things is money, bro. A human-made movie, $20, right? Let's say, round number. So you got to sell tickets for $20 to make back your money in a decent enough way in a decent enough time to pay off the movie that you made. Okay, you're going to be hit with, want to go see this thing for $2? And it's, again, you know it's not made by humans, but oh my God, it looks amazing. It's got all this IP that I already know. It's Fast and the Furious 21. And by the way, none of the actors even had to show up because they just used past performances and all that stuff. They CG'd all them in, but half that movie is CG anyway. They're driving cars to the moon. I mean, whatever, you know what I mean? Like it's already super surreal and out there. So you're just you'll just fully CG it. And the CG will all look better because it's next level AI CG. And on top of that, you'll be able to, you'll get a menu. So it's like Fast and the Furious, and you get to even decide which characters you want to be in it. Because like maybe there's some that you don't really like, and some that you do. And sometimes you want to bring back that character that wasn't, okay, yeah, it's going to be Vin, I'm going to bring back, and I want Paul Walker back. And you're going to get Paul Walker back. And on top of that, you might be able to bring back other long dead actors that were never in a Fast and Furious movie.
I think this is changing a little bit in his argument. I think he's moved on from the original, you can create whatever you want, whenever you want, because now you're taking part in the story, kind of like what I was just saying, more on Matt's side. So there still would be a market for movies, and but I hear what he's saying on the financial side, because you can't compete with the amount of I guess the amount of overhead it takes to make a legitimate, what we would call a blockbuster movie, or as we know it today. But I still am, I don't know. I still think I've got Matt's side on this one.
I think we fundamentally agree, because we seem to agree that this is bad.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But your point is that it's bad, but it is going to take over, and people will just.
You think that people's humanity will hold out and it won't give AI?
I mean, it's humanity, yes, but I think it's just as a spectacle, like that scenario you're describing.
Yeah.
Sounds like a spectacle that, and maybe becomes its own category of thing that people want to go see because they could go see their kid as Superman. But it's still not. It's not what actually makes people connect with the film to begin with. It's why choose your own adventure books. Okay, like the most analog version of AI. Choose your own adventure book. Those are entertaining for kids. There's no such thing as a choose your own adventure novel that adults read, because it's like when I'm reading Crime and Punishment by Dostoevsky, I don't want to pick the end. I want to know what the end was for
right,
I want Dostoevsky to tell me his story. If I'm sitting around a campfire and someone's telling me a story, now if you're sitting around with kids, and if you've ever told a story to a kid, they might, and you're telling the story, they might chime in and say, oh no, we'll make this happen. Or what, okay, well, what if a monster shows up here? Like they want you to take their, but with adults, when we're listening to a story, it's like, no, I want to hear your story. I want to hear your story. Tell me your story. And so I think that maintains, and it's why, here's what I'll say. I think the AI-generated movie can only be successful if we get to a point, and I think this might happen, where they're just not honest with us about whether this is real or not. So if it's so sophisticated that you can't tell, and they don't tell us that it's fake, well then yeah, maybe it could be successful. But if we know that, the problem is that you can go, you watch the movie, and you see the spectacle, and you're very impressed with the spectacle, but there's just no way to become emotionally invested in it because no human is involved at all at any level. And the only reason,
Except for the person that created it.
Well, but all they did was just type it into a computer, and the computer did the rest. So that
Understood, but to them and to everyone like them, I mean, Matt, we don't live in the world that we grew up in. We live in the world that our kids and younger people are growing up in right now. And why our television viewership and even film viewership down is because they all have a smartphone and they're all creators. They're all making TikToks and YouTube.
Yeah, but that's still a human creating things. Like I understand his point where, it's still a creative outlet for a human. Matt's point is, if you remove the human, then it's not going to be relatable. Like the big thing that you see on YouTube right now is like, be authentic. And, I think Matt has a point where if you're genuine and you're authentic and you're you, and it usually wins, right? I mean, maybe, like this is a bad video, but, I do think that Matt has a better point here, that the connection is to the human on the other side. Now, it gets a little sticky. I see the point where it gets a little sticky when you can't discern whether or not it's a real human. And we've seen that recently, which, with the whole thing on X and, anons and, are they really who they say they are? It's kind of the same idea. I get that. I don't know. It'll definitely be interesting to see.
YouTube video.
Down in the comments, I want to know who you guys agree with most. Do you agree with Matt, or do you agree with, Mr. Levi here?
Had Bobby Kennedy run as a Democrat, I would have absolutely voted for a Democrat in this last election. Because to me, Bobby was finally, at long last, not a perfect human being, but somebody that I absolutely believed was a decent human being who had gone through a lot in his life and was very honest about what he had gone through in his life and genuinely has a heart for wanting to not just make America healthy again, save this country, save it from itself, save it from the corruption that he saw firsthand in the Democratic Party, which is what ultimately kept him from being on that ticket in the expedited primary that nobody voted in to put Kamala in that spot. And then for them to just shut him out, but they shut him out because they knew that he could not be a puppet. He would not be a puppet. He would not be controlled in that. He actually has integrity. Tulsi Gabbard as well. So I was like, listen, I don't know where this is going to go. An independent candidate hasn't won since, was it Lincoln, right? Or something like that? Something crazy? I don't know.
Lincoln was Republican.
He ran as a Republican, but he started as an independent or something, I thought. Anyway,
Been a long time.
yes, it's been a minute to be very concerned about, and it's very real.
Matt makes me laugh. Since Lincoln was a Republican.
At the very least, we should all have full transparency. Let us see all of the studies and all of the data about all of these drugs and all of these vaccines and all of these food additives and everything. Why is that so hard to see? Because of lots and lots of corruption. So I'm like, okay, I'm all in with this guy. Like wherever he's going, I'm going. And I had the pleasure of meeting him and talking to him enough and knowing people around him very personally. And I was like, he was vetted. He was vetted to me. He was who I really fully believed would have been the best president this country has ever seen, probably since his uncle. And who also has his own foibles. But then the Democratic Party made that impossible for him, suing him to keep him off ballots and then suing to keep him on ballots and all of the chicanery. And then, Trump is nearly killed. And there, I think all of us in every party, on every level, every end of the spectrum, that was a massive, massive moment for Trump particularly. But in that massive moment, I and many others like me saw this incredible, I think, God-inspired shift. I think that was a miracle that Donald Trump lived. I think that there's no doubt.
Agree.
It's crazy to think about. That just
for sure.
That. And like, wow. But it brought a humility to Donald Trump that I don't think existed in him before, at least not on that level. And that's something I need in a leader. I need somebody who has at least some kind of humility to recognize that they are fallible, they are completely human and killable and deadable, and that we have an opportunity and a responsibility as leaders in this country to make this place better, to make other people's lives better, not just our own vanity, not just our own riches, which I feel like in his first run, there's a bit more of that, and I don't think that's happening. I think he recognizes that a lot of people saw in that and saw him do it, like, dude, why weren't you more effective? And there's a lot of things against him, understandably, but this time he's like taking no prisoners, and he's signing orders, and he's like taking charge, and he's doing what he promised he was going to do. And when was the last time any president really went in that hot and was like, we're doing it? And he made promises to the Maha people, and that whole, for Bobby to go and join him, I trusted Bobby. So if Bobby said, I said, have you talked to him enough? To ask him and Tulsi both, have you talked to President Trump enough to have vetted to know that this is real? This isn't just some play. This isn't just some political move. Like, he means what he's saying, and like he means it. I'm like, great. Well, then if that's what's happening, then I will vote for that man, and I will do everything that I can in order to get him into office. Because the alternative, to me, was not. I think we can. In the way that I know a lot of people.
Oh man, I hate that he said that. Like, and I know that I know that I'm being a little critical, probably a lot critical, but like anybody with some sense cannot say that the opposition to me was not an option. Like, it just objectively was not an option. I'll just say that.
Well, on the other side, felt the same way about Donald Trump. I get that, based on the way that the media has been working and operating and propagandizing for so long. I understand why a lot of people were made to fear another Trump presidency, and are still made to fear another Trump presidency. And that's why I felt like it doesn't matter what happens to me. It doesn't matter what happens to my career. If I save my career, but Kamala gets into office and we continue down this
you'll lose it. You're right.
Death spiral to the bottom that I fully believe that we were on. And I knew that I just sat on my hands because I was afraid I might lose this movie or that or whatever. I was like, I can't. God did not build me to do that. God built me to fight. God built me to lead. God built me to sacrifice if need be. Far too many people make way too many decisions nowadays for self-preservation. I get it. We should be smart and not do stupid things. We want to preserve our life and go live it as long and healthy and strong as we can. But damn it, man, this country is literally built on people that said, I might die today. Dude, and then they made it through that day and they said, I might die today and today and today and today. And I'm like, what good is my faith in God if I'm not trusting that, let's say my whole career in Hollywood goes away. Well, I'll find other work. There will be other things. But I am not going to go to bed. If I sat on my hands and she got elected, for the rest of my life, I would be kicking myself. And more than that, I would feel like those, I'm sure, very well-meaning Germans in 1930s Germany that were like, maybe it's not going to get so bad. It's very yelly, but maybe it's all good. Don't say anything. We don't want to. Like, I'm sure there were very good Germans that were like, it's not going to go totally off the rails. And it did. And it happened because enough of them didn't actually just stand up and go, nope, sorry, no, not going to.
All right, so I'll stop it there. That's pretty much it, the end of the video. You only got a few minutes left, but good interview by Matt Walsh. Super interesting stuff. I figured, since we've got a movie podcast, I might as well do some of my own reviewing, watching YouTube well, because we watch the movies well. Guys, thanks so much. If you've stuck around for this long, I really appreciate your time. I hope you got something out of it. I hope you liked it. Don't forget, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. We are here to stay. And most importantly, if you're going to watch, whether it be a movie or social media, watch it well.